Supermax Prison, the map with 6 Australias. And what I mean by that is that there are even 6 border continents. So this is the turtling players' paradise, or maybe even nightmare depending whether they like other turtling players or not. And in this map playing with high-ranked players the game would be very stalemating, but that's not necessarily the case today, as I've got some lower-ranked ones, setting the intermediate rank as the maximum rank, so I'm wondering to see how it works out. As you saw, I decided to use the sneakiest strategy in the world by sending the alliance requests to absolutely everyone. So they would be attacking each other leaving me alone, so I could just hoard the troops and watch the world burn. Well, the orange player actually sent the alliance request to me by himself, so actually he might be using the same sneaky strategy as me. And then even though the pink player was the only player who accepted my alliance request, actually he acted like an enemy. He was the player who selected the last territory in my continent to prevent me from getting it when he could have picked the territories elsewhere, so as of now he is a very bad ally and I do not trust him that much. But on the other hand, I know that I'm playing with low-ranked players, so I could expect them to act in some weird way. So actually we are going to see if our alliance turns out any good. I do not write it off so easily, especially when a bunch of players just ignored my alliance request. And here we are done with the manual setup, and this is the stage when the actual game begins. And from what I see is that the pink and purple players are fighting each other, and then the blue and orange players are fighting each other as well. So technically my one real opponent to which I should pay the most of attention is green. But just the problem is that he's turned before mine, meaning that after receiving the troop bonus for his continent before me he could attack me first and possibly get rid of me as a possible opponent. But might not be the case this time, because judging by his first turn he is playing very weird so far. Left his continent unguarded and then brought one of his armies to the continent for which 2 other players are already contesting. So even if wanting to go for it, firstly it would be smarter to wait till orange and blue players are deal with each other, with one of these players crushing another one's troops. From what I see is that the purple player might be the least experienced player here, as he put his armies in his continent in the territories which are blocked. But maybe it's just his first time playing on this map, but why I predict that he is not that much experienced because he took a whole turn doing nothing, while a more experienced player, by realizing that he put his army into a blocked place and cannot attack territories, would immediately fortify his army out of the blocked place. And I mean, I'm not judging these players, don't get me wrong. What I have in mind is that by realizing which players are decent and which ones are not so much, I could potentially take the advantage of it, which could really favor me. Anyway, with the orange and blue players sending me the attack requests to attack green, I decided to do so. At first I was very suspicious of them and I thought that maybe they made an alliance with each other as well, but then the orange player actually attacked blue, so I didn't really worry about it anymore, and by wanting to be a good ally I decided to listen to them and actually invade green into his continent, especially when I myself saw the green as the biggest threat in the beginning of the game. But with how it turned out, I realized that it was very dumb for me to invade the green player. Now he fortified his troops back from the orange player's continent on his border and probably will play passively if not wanting to get rid of me. While if I had just let the green player to hold his continent, then I think he would have taken out the orange player and we would have gotten to the 5-player situation. So actually now I feel like a low-ranked player who listened a higher player's advice to attack someone to be manipulated. But maybe it will let me build a stronger relationships with the orange and blue players. After all, the diplomacy is another part of the game. Though you should be very careful with it and choose your friends and enemies right. For now I might be good, as I did a favor for the orange and blue players, while the green player, instead of becoming an enemy for me, requested an alliance as well, which I obviously accepted. As one thing, neither orange nor blue attacked him, at least yet, and then I wouldn't want alone to waste a lot of troops on him. Then there are still a bunch of players in game, meaning that destroying him would lead me of getting eliminated as well. But now with the green player invading and trying to take out the pink player out, I think the green player doesn't feel any harsh feelings for me for sure. And with him being the most aggressive player, I think I will definitely let him hold continents, as he will actually be the one who will progress the game. And if he is genuinely want to be an ally with me, then it's extremely promising for me, as he will be attacking all other players before considering to attacking me. So if the orange and blue players want to attack him, then they could attack him themselves, but myself I would rather prefer having the green player into the game. As after all, from what it looks like is that the orange and blue players are turtling players who tell others to attack someone while actually not attacking that player themselves, despite that player being barely alive and having no troops on his borders. And with both of them keeping their armies blocked inside their continents, rather than fortifying them into outer borders to not have them blocked, that's another indicating sign that they want to play passively. Which of course might be smart, so don't get me wrong. But what I mean, ideally I would like to be the only passive player in the game, so I would prefer other passive players getting eliminated, while letting the aggressive players to survive, so as long as they wouldn't be targeting me. But from what I predict is that the green player wants to be friends with me. Or maybe he will just go attacking and taking continents from the players he think it would be the easiest to do so, so just the most importantly I need to assure that I wouldn't end up being one of the weakest players myself. Anyway, that was very weird seeing the purple player crushing that army of the blue player, is because there's no way the purple player was getting the center continent, and then if he wanted to get another continent, then it might have been better to try taking the continent from green. And I doubt his plan was to try taking the blue player out either. So I'm really confused what the purple player wanted to achieve by taking the blue player's army down. What were his thoughts behind that? Now I assume if I don't take the purple player out, then I think the green player will take him out himself, getting the third continent, and with that, with nobody attacking him, I think he would be really dominating the game. So because of that I decided to take out the purple player by himself. As besides that, with him having free cards from which I traded in a set in the same turn, I've got enough troops to guard both of my continents. And unless the green player decides to invade me immediately, then I think I should be safe, as obviously the orange and blue player will be weaker than me, so I assume the green player should go after them, assuming I understand the green player's logic right. So basically I would say that was a very amazing move to me. As with me actually successfully holding these continents, now I'm one of the strongest players, and the player who is in the most of danger is blue, so I assume the blue player will be the one to get eliminated next. And that's probably not a surprise why the blue player is requesting to attack green now. But I mean, the green player is my best ally now, so there's no way I would attack him, and I hope that he won't attack me either. That wouldn't be very smart for both of us to attack each other just to waste our advantage on each other, and that with it at least one of us would get eliminated before any of the rest of players. And then another thing is I expect is for the green player trying to expand, so if his plan to get more continents and eliminate someone, then there's even less sense for me to mess up with him if he's going to eliminate my opponents. The blue player could have actually attacked the green player himself when green was barely alive and didn't have troops to protect his continents. But now it's just way too late for that, and the blue player's faith is at other players' hands. And to be honest, the orange player even set me up to take the blue player out, or maybe the blue player set himself up by crushing that orange player's army, depending which way you are looking from, but I decided to rather not take the blue player out. As if taking the blue player out, the easiest continent for the green player to take would be from me, and I don't want that. I don't want that the green player would start to attack and be enemies with me. And besides that, if with me having the most continents, it would probably make the most sense for other players to attack me, so I wouldn't like to put myself into this position either. As actually I think the orange player is a relatively smart player, and could try not necessarily manipulate me to attack green, but the green player to attack me as well. The green player seemed to have disconnected for a turn, but now with him coming back to the game and taking out the blue player out, the interesting game continues. And I mean, I'm so happy that I left the green player alive when I could have gotten rid of him, because with him the game doesn't stalemate, so my prediction was actually right. So I'm just not sure how the game is going to go now. If the green player will appreciate our alliance and tries to go after orange next, or will try to go for the next easiest continent, meaning that he would attack me. But not necessarily what is going to happen next could depend on the green player alone. As actually the orange player sent me an attack request to attack green, which I agreed to, but only if the orange player attacks the green player first himself, as I didn't want the same scenario like in the beginning of the game happening again, with me attacking the green player alone, and after that with the players who sent me the attack request to attack him not attacking him themselves, even at the point when they could have definitely afforded doing so. But this time with the orange player attacking the green player first himself, there's no risk for me to end up being the player who would attack someone alone. So with that I decided to be a good ally to the orange player and attack the green player as well, taking over one of his continents like the orange player did. And at first I wanted to guard it as well, but then realizing that the border could be relatively weak, I decided not to, and just fortified that army back to my another continent. Actually it was bad that I was cut off from another green player's continent, as I think I would have won the game with taking him out. But now he got to trade in a set and survive, along with the orange player receiving big troop bonuses as well. But the good thing is that the green player has run out of time and neither took his continent from me back nor invaded it. So I think I might be able to properly guard it. But I think I probably regret being a good ally to the orange player. I mean, if I had let the orange player attack the green player alone, just skipping that turn and not following the orange player to take a continent from the green player as well, then maybe the green player would have tried taking his continent from the orange player back, and with that the game might have been given away for me. So I actually regret to not playing in this way. Though the downside would be if the green player wouldn't have taken his continent from the orange player back, then I think the orange player would have hated me and our diplomacy wouldn't have been good anymore. And I'm not sure, but maybe I potentially missed an opportunity to win in the last turn. I mean, even with the green player surviving and trading an ace set but still being at 3 cards at the end of the turn, I think that might have probably been my chance. As doing the math now, they had only 1 troop more combined than me. So I cannot actually believe what I missed that and wasn't really looking to the troops counter in general, well I mean looking at it but not doing the math. So I think the best decision for me would have been to take the green player out instead of splitting my army to properly guard the 3rd continent. It wasn't needed for me anymore when I was about to win. But I think I really saw the threat from the green player coming and my attention went to protecting myself from him while the troops counter being in the second plan. So I think my gameplay was very bad, as now the green player is picking on me and threatening to take the top middle continent from me. And then looking at the troops counter, now they have quite a bit more troops combined than me. And at the same time they're both at 1 card, so I wouldn't even get a value from cards if taking one of them out. And I mean we are now skipping our cards, but if with all of us getting cards, they would start having quite more troops combined than me even faster, as in the same period of time I would only trade in 1 set, while they combined in 2 sets. Anyway, I finally got to use the attack limit function in a public lobby properly. This is the function which lets you crush just selected amount of troops into your opponent's army rather than blitzing it using all of your troops. And obviously if I had crushed the green player's whole army which is put on my border taking over that territory, then I would unleash another green's army and with that he would take that continent from me. So this is why I'm using this attack limit function and keep crushing some troops into the green player, but honestly it doesn't help me much. I mean with every turn my opponents are getting stronger and stronger, so that's not some magical plan which will make me win. But I just do not really know what would be the best in this situation for me to do. I mean I tried using the tactic of sending an attack request for the orange player to attack green, but obviously the orange player isn't that dumb. It wouldn't be smart for him to attack green when green is picking on me and wanting to cause a problem, and then it wouldn't be smart for the orange player to attack green at the first place with me being the strongest player who is in the lead. Anyway, what I was considering potentially doing, is taking the orange player out, even with that meaning that I would end up having quite fewer troops in the two-player endgame with green. As from what it looks, the orange player is a decent player, and if I took the green player out, then he would win against me easily. But the green player seems to be quite less experienced, and along with it is taking a bunch of time to make his turn to not really do much. So maybe this would have let me win if I had actually taken the orange player out when I could, especially with this map being a very confusing map for a newer players as far as I know. But now it would probably be too late, as I used a bunch of troops into crushing green, so I don't really have enough troops anymore for the orange player's armies, and then the green player is about to crush his whole army into me. So actually the waiting game didn't give anything good and even worsened my situation. And now I was considering whether I should take the green player out or not, and at the end I decided not to, so just to fully take his continent, so instead of crushing his army into me, he would recapture it back. But with me taking a lot of time to think what to do, unfortunately I ran out of time. And unfortunately the green player, instead of recapturing his continent I invaded or taking a continent from me which I left unguarded, still decided to crush his army into my army. And besides that, he was even lucky to get a set at 3 cards, which I actually not sure if it's good or bad. Maybe that's actually good, because the orange player would have taken him out and gotten all of his cards, though maybe at the end doesn't make that much difference, as doesn't matter whether the troops gotten from these cards would have been used on me by green, or by the orange player. But maybe that's actually bad that the green player traded in a set, as then the orange player might have taken him out instead of letting him survive and attacking me. Anyway, back then I combined my troops into one big army for a reason. So because with orange player's armies being smaller than my own big army, he could potentially get confused and wouldn't realize that he could use both of his armies into crushing that one big army of mine. So I actually really like that move. And then besides that, was really fortunate that the orange player actually blocked one of his armies inside his continent, so that actually gives me a tiny chance to make a comeback. But maybe not necessarily, because I didn't have enough time to wipe the orange player out from all of the continents except the one he was having his biggest army into. And then running out of time I had to make the fortification choice fast, so with my mind not properly working I just fortified the same army into another place where were the orange player's territories, so that didn't really make any difference. I should have left that 10 troops army where it was, and then to fortify 5 troops army on that continent's army in which the orange player had his biggest army. Anyway, the good news is that I have gotten the attacker's advantage when crushing my smaller army into the orange player's biggest army. I was favored with even 14 troops, which I didn't expect at all, and even thought I would lose more troops than orange because the orange player's army was quite bigger than mine. So I've got quite lucky here. And that's awesome. The orange player ran out of time to fortify his army on his continent back, so now I could easily invade it. I captured one more territory to decrease his territorial troop bonus by 1 by bringing him to 14 territories, but not sure whether it was actually a good idea, because of unleashing his armies of 3s, it will be easier for him to recapture his continent. And that's right, with him getting a good blitz roll he recaptured his continent easily and fortified his army back on the border. But I think this is the time where I finally execute my destruction plan. I'm going to recapture a bunch of continents without unleashing the orange player's biggest army, and with that I think I should be able to hold at least one of them as well. Too bad I didn't have a set at 4 cards, as then I would have recaptured another 2 as well, and with that I would have ended up with a few continents, but I think that will be fine as well. As you can see, the orange player only brought through one of the continents, and then with me finally trading in a set I will just recapture all of those one border continents. So to make sure there's no way the orange player makes a comeback, and to be ready to make the final blow to him with one big single army so I could end it once and for good. And I'm not sure why the orange player is setting up his armies in this way in the armies of 5s, because he might end up not breaking into any of these continents. But alright, to break into them wasn't even his plan, or maybe he has miscalculated his troops. And this is how you make a comeback. From AGG to me, I turned it into being AGG for orange. I think the orange player was very confident that he got the game, but to be honest, I didn't expect to win this game either. And now for another non-classical map, I would recommend you watching this video as well. That's another interesting game with a lot of interesting attacks, diplomacy, and strategy. So make sure to check this one out as well.